Are you a teacher? Are you feeling underpaid, overworked, and underappreciated? Are you tired of your students falling asleep in your class? Are you falling asleep in your class? Are you feeling dried up and out of touch? Well, join us. Take a seat as we explore the wonderful world of constructivism. Constructivism was pioneered by psychologists Piche and Vygotsky in the early 1900s. And although the two had different ideas on human development, both constructivist theories are deeply rooted in the idea that children author their own knowledge, and teachers are merely facilitators, not dictators, of children's education. Cognitive constructivism focuses on our brain's organization and storage of information. As children develop and experience the world, they create schemas. Schemas are the basic building blocks of intelligent behavior.
Think of schemas as a filing cabinet or system for the brain. As we learn new things about the world, we create a file and place it in our stored knowledge. When we are exposed to new information, we search through these files, or schemas, to determine how this new information relates to and can assimilate with what we already know about the world. If this new information cannot be filed in an already existing schema, we accommodate and create a new place for it.
Vygotsky's constructivist theory focused on social development. He believed that culture and social interactions greatly impacted human development. As children grow, they pick up on the behaviors of those around them. They learn about the world by watching and observing others interact with each other and with them. Let's take a moment to check in with our friend Diane, and she can tell us how she's applied this theory in her own classroom.
I started using social constructivism in my classroom by integrating situated cognition. Now, my children are engaged, excited to learn, and less likely to have their homework eaten by their dog. Situated cognition is a social constructivist strategy that puts an emphasis on lessons that use real-world context. The idea is that thinking occurs in social and physical contexts that are familiar to our children. So I modeled a few lesson plans after educator David Sobel. Sobel uses place-based education to engage his students. Place-based education requires using the local community and the environment as a starting point for curriculum building. So now we do projects that involve the history and local geology of the area around us. I think that my students have started to gain a deeper appreciation of where we live, but I understand what they're seeing in their community and their local environment.
Vygotsky believed that each child has a zone of proximal development. This zone includes what a child knows and what can be built upon independently, along with where they begin to shut down and where they begin to depend on others to help them learn. A child with a high ZPD is a very independent learner, whereas a child with low ZPD needs others to help them.
One way that I help children with a low ZPD is to form a collaborative learning group. In collaborative groups, peers are working together and learning from one another. They work together to solve problems, discuss a topic, and maybe even do a full group project together. Oftentimes, roles are assigned to different students based on their ZPD. For instance, somebody with a high ZPD might be given the group leadership role, whereas another student with a lower ZPD could be the note taker. In this instance, our child with a high ZPD and our note taker with a lower ZPD work together collaboratively. They need to make sure that the whole group is on the same page. So here, our higher ZPD student may be able to influence our lower ZPD student. They may give them encouragement and could even help boost their confidence so that they're more independent learners themselves. So, Susie, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind being the note taker today in today's collaborative group. How would you feel about that? Awesome, go on.
Let's dive right in, shall we? All right. Let's start from the basics.
Of course.
What is culturally responsive teaching?
All right, well, I think people seem to consider cultural responsive teaching as this new concept, when in actuality, advocates of social constructivism have been preaching that we need to integrate culture into our educational settings for quite some time. I think that we started to kind of fall away from this when teachers started to become overly concerned about seeming biased or maybe discriminatory. And I even hear teachers to this day say, well, I don't see color in my classroom. You know, they're colorblind. And the thing is, I understand why they're saying this, but we need to celebrate each other's differences. It's great if you have a classroom that's wonderfully diverse, and celebrate that. Don't pretend it doesn't exist. So, we also have other teachers, though, that say, you know, I see 100 students a day. How am I supposed to remember, you know, who celebrates this holiday and what we should be doing to encourage that? And the thing is, it's not about what we call surface level culture. Surface level culture is holidays, maybe it includes music or certain type of clothing that's worn by a culture. And we don't have to, you know, constantly bring up things that have to do with this surface level culture.
Okay.
There's also shallow culture, and that has to do with certain behavioralisms. Like there are certain cultures that talk really, really close to one another, or they engage each other all the time in eye contact.
With their eyes.
With, of course. And it's really cool and it's different, and some other people might get kind of freaked out by that.
Of course.
But this is a cultural difference. And then there's deep level culture. And this deep-rooted culture includes spirituality, self-concept, our understanding of fairness, what's right and what's wrong, and justice of the world. These deep core concepts often can connect people of different cultures, because sometimes you find similarities between what might on the surface seem as a different culture, but deep down we all have kind of these human values that connect us. And that's kind of what it means to be a culturally responsive teacher, is to show our connectivity through our deep level cultural roots.
That's very beautiful.
Very beautiful.
But I may not be an educator.
Alright.
But I did my research.
Oh, it's gonna stop me.
What is it that makes CRT
Mhm.
different from something like social constructivism?
Okay. Well, to me, I don't think it's about differentiating between the two.
Okay.
I think that as a culturally responsive teacher, you use theories from social constructivism, from cognitive constructivism, and you put a culturally responsive twist on it.
Okay.
So, as a social constructivist teacher, I would probably use a lot of what we call collaborative group learning.
All right.
So this is getting students, you know, into groups where they can discuss things, but as a culturally responsive social constructivist, I'm going to instead ensure that these collaborative groups are as diverse as possible. So this might include people who aren't necessarily in the regular circle of friends, but if I put them together in a group in class, they start to learn from each other, they start to find some similarities and differences, and of course, in a group like this, you're all working for one common goal, and that's, you know, has to do with your subject matter, and it's a really great way to kind of just get kids together.
Very great. But what drew you to culturally responsive teaching?
Well, Dr. Latson Billings, and she is a wonderful educator. I highly recommend her to all of you if you have not looked into her.
Just a little plug there.
Yeah. She gave this talk about treating every student as though they were a genius. When we treat our students like they are the future, they are the geniuses that are going to change the world, then maybe, just maybe, one of those students will. She gave a great example of Martin Luther King. You know, his teacher had no idea that this kid is going to grow up to change the world, but clearly something in his upbringing allowed him to access the best human that he could possibly be. And as an educator, we just have to provide each individual student the best education they can get, and so that includes teaching to their diversity and making them feel like they're welcome, and you know, we're supporting them. You know,
It's all about what the true value of education is.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, then tell me, what does your classroom look like? What are some special things you do that relate to culturally responsive teaching?
Sure. So we're actually right now going kind of beyond just the cultures in our classroom, but we're also reaching out to other cultures throughout the world. In our global studies class, we've actually set up virtual pen pals. It's really cool. Our kids are linked up to students from Mexico, and they share emails and they chat, and we have this real-time interaction. And it's just really awesome, especially right now. I think this is a really interesting time for kids to kind of be talking with other cultures across the world, and not just in their classroom.
Okay, so what sort of work do they do together?
All right, well, it varies from session to session, but they socialize, they do projects together. I know that we've given them a tour of our school, and they've given us a tour of their school. When we go out on field trips, I bring a video camera, and then we take little clips or pictures, and we share that with them, and they've done that with us. So there's this constant, information sharing and just understanding, what do they do day to day? What do we do day to day? Then other times we simply just share a classroom or a lesson through the internet.
Excellent.
Yeah. Tonight's Growing Local segment features a young teacher who's made quite a splash in her local community. Miss Rita Popita has aligned her 8th grade class with not one, but 2 other local businesses in what she tells us is an attempt to better connect her students to their town and each other. In the same vein as noted author and teacher Rafe Esquith, who you might remember from the PBS special on his Hobart Shakespeare program, Miss Popita has garnered some attention of her own town with her work in bridging the classroom and the community. For more, we turn to our field correspondent, Maria Martin, in the newsroom. Good morning, Maria.
Good morning, Janet.
Maria, you've recently visited Miss Popita's classroom. What can you tell us about your experience?
Well, Janet, it's not too uncommon these days to see younger teachers trying to take their learning out onto the streets. Miss Popita isn't the norm, but she's certainly not alone. At the onset, her classroom looks like any other. Books, desks, an array of tools for scientific experimentation that you'd expect from a science class. But what's really notable is what's happening outside the classroom. Popita and her students have been working all spring long to grow a sustainable garden of vegetables to be sold with the students' help this Saturday at the local farmers market. Recently, she says her class also took a trip out to Angle Orchard Farm and to see firsthand the preparation and work it took that goes into the beginning of the growing season.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. Popita says that she can't take much credit for the whole idea, though, since this is a idea that goes back to the early 20th century, According to Popita, there are a lot of different ways to teach the values and materials she's trying to share with her kids. But it all starts with understanding the brain, their development, and the importance of showing real-world applications of their material.
Wonderful. So now, what is it that Miss Popita and her students plan to do with the funds that they raise from their garden at the market this week?
Funny you should ask. They are actually going to be donating those profits to the local effort to repair our park.
Ah, that is just so nice. Well, thank you, Maria. Now, on to...
You ever feel like everything is just the same thing on TV?
Yeah, maybe we should invest in some Netflix.